this story was getting so long we had to stop and eat. So here we are back. I'm going to finish telling my story about being in the Army. And we were out in the field, and we had had our meal. And I was telling them what kind of utilities that we used to eat out of and stuff. Metal cup and the metal plate and all that stuff that we carried with you. And then after we got done eating, well, we started out in the field as usual. And of course I'm afraid of snakes. And so the grass is about almost waist high. And you can see for miles and you can't see no house or nothing. I mean, we're out in the field, we're out in the country. And so we're advancing, and when you're advancing, you go so far and you hit the ground. And so that's what I was doing. I'd advance up and I'd hit the ground. And so when I hit this ground one time, there went a big snake right across in front of me. But I held my position, but it gave me a scare. And so we went on and went through this section of the training, and
this was in New York, right?
This is in New York, yeah. So we went through this training, and about the same thing happened each meal. And so this one time, after the meal, we had put our containers up, and they always brought out a barrel with water in it. And what we did, we just dipped our utilities down in there and kind of washed the stuff off, you know, and then put them back in their packs, and that's the way we kept everything clean. And but anyway, this one day, after we'd got done eating and put up our stuff, we was waiting. Sometime they'd give you maybe if you eat fast and you got done, well, you might got like a 5 or 10 minute extra, you know. And so it'd been an old house there, and it'd been tore down. And it was just a basement. And so some of the guys had got down in there rumbling around, and they found a snake. Well, they caught it. And here they come, they brought that snake up there, and I didn't know nothing about it. And they got behind me and had that thing right up at my face, and then they hollered at me. And when they hollered at me, why, I turned around, and that snake's tongue was sticking out right at my face, you know. Well, that just scared me to death almost. And I jumped up and grabbed my rifle. And I was going after him, but I got stopped. My friends, they grabbed and held me. And it's a good thing it did, because probably I was in a rage and I would have probably hurt the guy. And but we never did have any more of that. But then we got word that we were going on Operation Snowfall. Well, so far we hadn't seen no snow. Hadn't been no snow. So
now, what was Operation Snowfall?
Now, Operation Snowfall is you're going into war. It's a play war against another outfit. In other words, we were going to be fighting the 11th Airborne Division.
Right.
That was a division, and we were a regiment. But see, that division, they come in, and they would come out, jump out of planes, and land on open hills and things, and then you know, stuff like that, you know. So that's the way they got in there. Some come in by trucks, and they brought their heavy artillery and stuff in like that. But sometimes they bring it in and drop it, just like they would in regular war. So if you're off in a distance and there ain't nothing, no trees or nothing, you can see this stuff falling, you know. So we could see it falling. And but before we get into all of that, was telling you about that we were going on Operation Snowfall. Well, we didn't have no snow. And, well, I had my wife up there, or she'd come on up. We hadn't been married too long. And so we were sitting around one Sunday evening, and we decided to walk down about 7 blocks down in town and go to a movie. Well, we come back out, and we had probably 6 inches of snow or better. And so I told the wife, I said, let's just go on down the street a little further, about another block or something, and there's another theater. And just so happened it was a double feature, so we didn't get out till pretty late. It was getting about 6 o'clock or something like that. But when we come out, did we get the surprise of our life, because by that time we had over 2 foot of snow. And so here we just had the regular shoes on and stuff like that. I didn't have my boots or nothing like that on. And here you get on the sidewalk and it's just level. So it's just like where you go out rabbit hunting. You see the tracks. You could see the tracks where we were going because it was up around our knees, you know. Well, we made it back to the house. And so normally I caught the bus into camp, and I had to be there for Reveille, which was at 6 o'clock. And so I had to catch the bus, and I caught the bus right in front of the house, and it was just about a block till you hit the, what we call the Army Highway, and or government highway, or what you want to call it, but we call it the Army Highway. And it was a 4-lane highway into camp, and it was just straight. And so long about we went to bed that night, and not knowing, or not really even thinking, we still had over 2 or 3 feet out there at that time. And we went to bed that night, and normally I caught the bus in. And so there's a sergeant had a room there next to us, him and his wife. And so here he's banging on my door at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he says, hey, Corporal. By that time I'd made Corporal. So he said, hey, Corporal, he says, you want to ride in with me this morning? And I said, well, not necessarily. I just catch a bus, go same as usual, because he'd never asked me before. And so he said, well, he says, get up and take a look out. You might change your mind. Well, I was up, we was on the 2nd floor, so I got up and looked out, and it looked to me like the snow was right there, straight across, just straight across, you know. And I said, my goodness. And well, I said, what is it? And I said, man, we got a snowstorm. Well, you ought to look out here. And we had a 6 foot snow. Well, we got up, and of course the landlord and them, they kept the, they was used to these here big snows, so they kept their snow shovels outside on the porch, front porch. And so when we go out on the front porch, we managed to get the door open from where it, but most of the snow comes straight down. It didn't blow, you know. And so we started digging our way out. And that was at 4:30 we started. Well, living in the city, you've got about 25 feet to the road, the driveway. And then you come, the houses come close, and you ain't got, you know, you don't have the room to pull the car up no further. So the 25 feet, we dug our way out. And what we was doing was cutting it in blocks, and then throwing them blocks out, you know. And it was a good snow and everything, so we told the wives, you keep trying to call the camp, and while we were out there working, you know, and tell them we're going to be late if we can even get there. And we didn't know what to expect, and we dug our way out of there. and got to the road. Of course, now they had machines out there. It was a big old machine. It had a thing on the front of it, just going through, and it was just taking and going around, and that snow was going up. And then they'd have a truck hooked behind, and they'd blow it in that truck. And when they got a truck full, they'd haul it off and dump it somewhere. But that's the way they kept the street open. But I imagine there was probably at least a foot of solid ice on that road. Well, we got up to the red light, and me and him both stood there, big eyes, and said, "Al, what's this?" So we opened the door and got out. The car didn't have running boards, so you stood up on the inside. And we done like that, up on our tiptoes, and looked out over the snow. I mean, it just level, because it was level ground. So we turned around and went back to the house. Well, probably about 3 something, we got our call through, and we told them we wasn't going to be able to make it to the camp. And they said, well, as soon as you can, get in here because we need you. Because this was a long weekend, what they call a 72-hour pass. So you got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. And so a lot of the people, and most of the company, had went to New York. And so we didn't have nobody there. And so what they done, they had blades and things, and they put them on the tanks. Now, I don't know how they done this, but they put blades on tanks. And so they cleared that 10 mile. It was 10-mile highway from town to camp. And so at the time, we didn't know we could get out of the driveway, but we couldn't go nowhere. And so the next day, probably about 3 or 4 o'clock, somewhere along in there, well, we got a call, because we told them to call back if they had got to get the road open. And what they had done, they had put them tanks out there, and them tanks would take and push that snow up. And they had pushed that snow up about 25 feet on each side, and just left the roadway open. And so they called and told us that we could get in. So I went in, but when I went in, I told the wife, I said, I don't know when we'll get back. And so, in other words, we went into camp, and then we got in camp. We had to start putting up tents, because Operation Snowfall was just 2 weeks away. And we had to start putting up tents because our outfit was a regiment. And what was coming in was a division.
Can you define regiment?
So a regiment is, it takes 4 regiments, I think, to make a division. So it was that much, we was that much smaller. So we had a larger crowd coming in.
How many people were in your...
Well, actually, you had, it was 41 to each platoon. Yeah, and so it's 4 times that. 4 ones 4, and 4 fours are 12. Let's see, 16. That's about 160 some people to a company. And so anyway, everything had, for the 11th Airborne Division, had to be set up in tents. Everything. Their mess hall, everything had to be set up in tents. Well, we'd get out there, and they had trucks come in, had these big machines on them. You use a jackhammer.